But then what needs to happen is that there needs to be proper discussions about the way forward, an end to the Israeli apartheid. That needs to be a fundamental part of what happens next, not more violence, but an end to the violence, and proper talks about what happens next that takes into account the fact that the basic bottom line fact that Palestinians are human beings and deserve to live in their own country.
The Israeli murdering machine wants to stop against the Palestinians in Gaza unless peace and justice-loving people all over the world stand together and press their parliaments and governments to raise their voice against the Israeli massacres. As the US and the EU go so far in supporting Israeli Prime Minister in his war on Palestine, the EU stopped its development aid to the Palestinians today in favor of Israel, and the US position is known to all of us. To talk more about that, I have with me Mr. Roger McKenzie from the UK. Roger McKenzie is the international editor of the Morning Star newspaper and the former General Secretary of the Anti-Colonial Movement and former Assistant General Secretary of Unison, UK's largest trade union. The UK's Prime Minister's voice was unequivocal in supporting Israel, though he is watching Israeli killing of more than 600 Palestinians, injuring 2,000. But that is the position of the UK. Let's talk with Mr. McKenzie about that. You are welcome, Mr. McKenzie.
No, thanks for having me.
You must have heard the statement by your Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of the UK, saying that Britain is unequivocally supporting the Israeli government in its measures today. And we see what measures the Israeli government is having, killing hundreds of Palestinians. Just today, 154 Palestinian women and children died under Israeli bombs in Jabalia and other areas in Gaza. Your take on that, please.
Well, I think first of all, we have to be really clear that just because the Prime Minister of Britain says that this is the country's position, that doesn't mean to say that that is actually the position of the people who live in the country, it's the position of his political party. And I think it's important to make that distinction, because what I've seen over the last few days is lots of people demonstrating, lots of people protesting, lots of people standing up for the Palestinians and saying how important it is that we stand by the Palestinians at a time when they're being slaughtered. We're seeing mass, executions really on a vast scale. We're seeing collective punishment on a vast scale that is absolutely against international law. And what we actually see, and something that the UK government and all the other colonial governments really need to be opening their mouths and talking about, is what are they going to do about the fact that Israel is blatantly breaking international law with their collective punishment. So while they do that, what we see today is the Israelis saying things like, well, they're going to besiege Gaza. They're going to stop all water, electricity, and they're going to close it down, basically. That's collective punishment, and people should be raising their voices and saying how absolutely outrageous that is and that it needs to be stopped. But yet again, what we see is that it's one rule for the Israelis and another rule for the Palestinians. We have to stand up for the Palestinians. Later today in the UK, I know that there will be lots more demonstrations taking place. So I can assure every Palestinian listening to this that just because the British Prime Minister is saying that this is the country's position, that there are lots of people in this country who are standing up for the Palestinians and making their voices heard.
And in light of that, Mr. McKenzie, do we expect more activities by the public, by the activists in Britain tomorrow and the days to come? And how would these activities affect the position of the parliament and the government and press Israel to stop? It's enough for spilling blood on the ground.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy at all, because what we have is a consensus that's being created between the major political parties. But I think people will be looking at what's taking place and saying this can't go on. There needs to be a stop in the violence from the Israelis. And it's a call that should have been made many, many years ago, but has gone uncalled for. People haven't said that thing. You know, it's not like violence suddenly started on Saturday. What we've seen over many, many years now is the Israelis on virtually daily raids into Palestinian communities, killing hundreds and hundreds of Palestinians. This has to stop. So what we need to see is a return to an end to the violence from the Israelis. But then we also need to see a return to discussions that's going to bring about a long-term solution to this. You can't just talk about what's been going on since this weekend. We have to start talking about the root causes of the problem. And the root cause of the problem is the Israeli occupation of Palestine. And that's what needs to be dealt with.
Yes, Mr. McKenzie, the Palestinians and the pro-justice people who are going to watch and listen to this interview are going to like your statements. But what about the media outlets in Britain, mainly the mainstream media? How do you see their coverage of what's going on in Gaza today?
Oh, they've been a disgrace. They've just it's like they just read out a press release from the Israeli government, effectively. There's no challenge to the Israelis and what they're doing. There's no challenge to the fact that they're slaughtering Palestinians in their own homes, that the Israelis are specifically and deliberately targeting residential accommodation. They're targeting mosques. They're targeting Palestinian businesses. It's collective punishment, and it's completely arbitrary. Well, you know, what they're doing, well, it's not arbitrary. What they're doing is very deliberate. They are targeting Palestinians, and they're working on the basis that a collective punishment is a way of stopping the resistance fighters from standing up. The media outlets in the UK have blood on their hands as well. If they don't stand up and say that things need to be done to call out what the Israelis are doing. I've seen, for example, the use of white phosphorus bombs being used over Gaza. Yeah, completely breaking international law, but again, collective punishment against the Palestinians. And again, the collective punishment isn't anything that's new. The Morning Star newspaper, for whom I'm the international editor, will continue to report the facts. We'll continue, along with other international outlets like People's Dispatch and so on, other outlets across the world, Globetrotter, we'll be making sure that the voice of the Palestinians is heard, but that we are the voice for truth. And we will not simply sit around and just read out a press statement, become a stenographer for the Israeli government. We need to start calling them out for what they're doing. And we also need to call out our governments in the West for what they're doing, which is their blind faith in just taking whatever the Israeli says is fact as fact. We have to stand up.
Yes. Mr. McKenzie, we also the Israeli flag being hoisted on the European Parliament and at the buildings of different European governments. We heard today a statement by the representative of the EU Commission declaring freezing the European development aid to the Palestinian government and to the Palestinians. In what context we should understand such steps by the European governments?
Well, it's so hypocritical of what they're doing, but unsurprising in many ways, because these are the same people who fail to call out the Nazis who exist within Ukraine. Just call them out. The fact that Ukraine has ban political party opposition, ban trade unions. They'd not call those people out. So I've no doubt at all that they wouldn't call what's happening, what the Israelis are doing, they wouldn't call that out either. We have to force these people. We have to force these politicians to do the right thing. Politicians don't usually move on anything unless there's heat underneath them to do something. So what we need to do is create that heat through our protests, by being out in the streets, by making our voices heard about what is really needed there and what is actually going on. Fact, Israel are committing war crimes as we speak. What should happen is that they should be brought before the international courts in the same way as people tripped over themselves to bring Russia to the international courts. And they couldn't wait to do that. None of them are talking about doing that to Israel, and that's where Israel needs to be. But they need to call out the fact that you can't just put these flags up all over the place. You can't just put these flags on top of buildings that are, government buildings that are in our name. Because I'll tell you this now, they're not doing it in the name of the people. They're doing it in the name of short-term political decisions. And we have to call out those decisions for what they are. And they're a disgrace. And they are allowing the Palestinians to be killed in their own homes, to be killed in the streets, and they're saying nothing about it. They're hypocrites.
Yes. My final question to you, Mr. McKenzie, how do you read the political scene in the region? We see that the American warships are coming to the Mediterranean shores. We see how almost all the European governments are supporting Netanyahu's aggression on Gaza. Do you think that there is a plan by the United States, the Western governments, to come with a certain new political structure, a new political shape for the region? What do you think of the consequences of this war?
I think I don't really know what's in the minds of the US. What I do know from history is that the way that the United States carries out its activities is based on the notion of, they are the rulers of the world, they're the police of the world, that they can do whatever they want, and international law doesn't apply to them or their friends, except when their friends are no longer their friends. And we've seen plenty of that over the years, where people who were basically clients for the US suddenly fall out with them, and then they're removed, and those leaders are then removed and destroyed. I don't know what's in the minds of the US, but what I do know is this: there needs to be a de-escalation. That is not helped by the US putting more military in the area, which can only provoke other neighbours to take a reaction to that. I want to see the violence stopped, but I absolutely don't just want to see it stopped and things to carry on the way they were. The violence needs to stop, but then what needs to happen is that there needs to be proper discussions about the way forward, an end to the Israeli apartheid. That needs to be a fundamental part of what happens next. Not more violence, but an end to the violence, and proper talks about what happens next that takes into account the fact that the basic bottom line fact that Palestinians are human beings and deserve to live in their own country, and that it's time for the occupiers, the settler colonialists, to remove themselves from Palestine.
Mr. McKenzie, it has been a great honor having you on our program. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And thanks for having me, and good luck and solidarity to you all.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And from me, Osama Nazal, have a nice time.